It happened just 5 minutes ago, and the entire world is reeling. The British royal family has confirmed what many feared, but no one dared to say out loud. In a somber, carefully worded statement, the palace announced a heartbreaking development that signals a turning point in royal history. No smiling balcony appearances, no parades, just silence and grief. King Charles III's condition has taken a devastating turn, and now the future of the monarchy hangs by a thread. Behind palace doors, loyalties are shifting, roles are changing, and one silent figure is emerging as the crown's unexpected anchor: Catherine. The announcement that froze the palace. It was 10:17 a.m. when the royal press secretary stepped in front of the cameras at Buckingham Palace, his face pale and his voice unsteady. No preamble, no comforting introduction, just 10 words that froze the United Kingdom and beyond. His Majesty's condition has deteriorated. Further details to follow. There was no mention of the illness, no prognosis, just an eerie finality behind those carefully measured words. Just an hour earlier, Prince William and Princess Catherine were seen entering the palace grounds. No royal waves, no smiles. Their expressions were unreadable, tight-lipped, eyes down, shoulders tense. They had arrived at exactly 9:12 a.m., and every movement suggested urgency. Something was wrong, and it wasn't new. It was escalating. Notably absent was Queen Camilla. Scheduled to attend a charity gala that evening, she was nowhere in sight, and palace aides offered no explanation. That silence ignited a firestorm of speculation. Old questions surfaced fast. Where was Camilla? Why wasn't she by the king's side? And what fractures inside the palace had now become too deep to hide? The press had come expecting routine updates. Instead, they got what felt like the start of a royal unraveling. Charles III, the monarch crowned just 20 months ago in May 2023, was now the subject of a statement that hinted not at recovery, but retreat. And as reporters scrambled, one question echoed louder than the rest. Is the reign already slipping through the crown's fingers? Behind the official statement was a story long kept quiet. For months, signs had been whispered about in corners of the palace: missed meetings, unusual absences, and last-minute cancellations. But now the truth could no longer be hidden. The king's condition wasn't new. It was managed, hidden, controlled. Until now. And as the veil lifted, what emerged wasn't just a health crisis. It was a monarchy in motion, one that may already have moved beyond its sovereign. King Charles's health crisis exposed. It didn't happen overnight. Palace insiders now confirm that King Charles III had been battling a serious, undisclosed illness for nearly 8 months. Since around June 2024, those closest to him noticed subtle changes: fatigue, reduced travel, shortened meetings. What began as whispered concern became undeniable by October, when royal physicians were quietly summoned to Clarence House multiple times a week. The king, once energized by duty, had grown withdrawn. Public engagements were cancelled or handled by Prince William. Reports of him collapsing briefly during a November 2024 strategy meeting were never confirmed. But suddenly, palace events grew sparse, and all official press releases were filtered through layers of vague language. Royal watchers now look back at his May 2023 coronation with fresh eyes. What once seemed like the beginning of a new chapter now feels like a ceremonial pause. A placeholder, a final bow before a quiet withdrawal. Charles had fought for the throne for decades, Yet within 2 years, the weight of the crown had become too much to carry alone. The impact was immediate. Emergency planning sessions were triggered across the Commonwealth realms, including Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Protocols once discussed only in theory were suddenly activated. Not abdication, not death, but a gray space of royal uncertainty. A monarch too unwell to lead, yet too present to replace. The question now wasn't just about health, it was about power. And where there is a vacuum in power, something always rises to fill it. As Charles stepped back, whether by force or by fate, eyes turned to the next in line, not just to wait, but to act. And that's exactly what William and Catherine did. But it wasn't a coronation. It wasn't even a declaration. It was something far more subtle and far more dangerous to the palace's balance. It was a statement wrapped in legacy and signed in Diana's name. William and Catherine step into the light. In a move that stunned royal insiders, Prince William took the podium at St. James's Palace on March 1, 2025, and unveiled the Diana Initiative, a sweeping public service campaign focused on mental health, youth advocacy, and compassion-based leadership. No palace fanfare, no father beside him, just William, standing alone and acting. The name wasn't accidental. Invoking Princess Diana immediately sent emotional shockwaves through the public. Within minutes, social media was flooded with old photos, quotes, and clips of her most iconic moments. By that evening, the phrase "Diana's legacy lives on" trended globally, and the public narrative shifted. Catherine and William weren't heirs. They were already leading. Catherine stood beside William during the launch, poised and resolute. In interviews following the event, she spoke of kindness, mental resilience, and unity. Her tone was calm, her words direct. Polling released the next day showed her approval ratings had surged to 81%, surpassing even William. For many, she had become the embodiment of a modern queen, graceful, intelligent, and quietly unstoppable. The most striking detail: the entire initiative had been developed not by Charles's court, but by William and Catherine's private team at Kensington Palace. Communications, partnerships, even the branding, none of it touched Clarence House. This wasn't a royal duty handed down. It was a mantle taken up. And for the first time, the future didn't feel like a promise. It felt like a fact. Queen Camilla's disappearance raises questions. As the Diana Initiative swept through public consciousness, Queen Camilla vanished. Not metaphorically, but literally. She skipped 3 high-profile events, including a March 5th state dinner at Windsor Castle and a March 7th royal concert benefiting her own charity. Palace aides claimed she was resting at Ray Mill House, but her absence only deepened the divide and inflamed speculation. Behind the scenes, insiders revealed rising tension between Camilla and Prince William. The launch of the initiative, named for Diana no less, was reportedly done without Camilla's knowledge. One aide described her mood as volcanic. A hot mic during a private fundraiser allegedly captured her bitter warning, "You bring her ghost back, and you bury us all with her." Suddenly, the Queen Consort's profile began to shrink. Her patronages received less media coverage. Her portrait, once prominently displayed in a key meeting room at Clarence House, was removed quietly. No statement, no comment. Staff claimed routine redecorating. Few believed it. Royal commentators began asking tough questions. Was Camilla being sidelined, or was she retreating from a storm she couldn't control? Either way, her silence spoke volumes. And while Catherine was gaining ground in public sympathy, Camilla was losing visibility at the most critical moment in the monarchy's shift. The palace may never admit it, but every step forward by William and Catherine was being met with either resistance or silence from the old guard. Camilla's retreat wasn't just about personal offense. It was about fear. Fear that the crown was no longer shaped by tradition, but by emotion. And as Diana's memory surged back into relevance, those who once tried to bury her were suddenly feeling buried themselves. The future was moving, and no one was asking permission. The silent rebellion inside the crown. It didn't happen with trumpets. It happened in emails, in rerouted memos, in sudden silences. Over the course of just 8 weeks, key decisions that once passed through Clarence House were quietly redirected to Kensington Palace. Staff stopped asking, "Has the king seen this?" and began asking, "Has William signed off?" One insider called it a bloodless transition. Another called it a quiet coup in pearls and empathy. Whatever the label, the truth was clear. William and Catherine were no longer waiting in the wings. They were leading from them. Media outlets noticed. By late March 2025, royal reporters had begun quoting William's press secretary as the main source of palace guidance. Updates on initiatives, appearances, even family matters came from Kensington, not the King's office. The initiative's rollout, praised across 15 Commonwealth countries, had been entirely managed by the younger royals, with no input from Charles or his advisors. Behind closed doors, it stung. King Charles, reportedly blindsided by the initiative's launch, is said to have muttered during a private family briefing, "Why was I not told first?" The room went silent. No apology came. Just a pause. And then, a quiet return to the new order. It was subtle. It was civil. But it was irreversible. And the walls of Clarence House, once the command center of the crown, were growing quieter by the day. The shift in power wasn't ceremonial. It was operational. Titles remained unchanged, but roles were clearly evolving. And while Charles remained physically present, it was clear his influence was fading. The monarchy wasn't collapsing. It was reorganizing. And as the center of power tilted toward Kensington, so did the loyalty of the palace. But the most painful fracture wasn't between king and court. It was between father and son. And what happened next would change their relationship forever. The fracture between father and son. On March 3, 2025, a private meeting was held at Clarence House. It was short, just under 30 minutes, but insiders say it marked the point of no return. King Charles had requested the meeting personally. Prince William arrived alone. Catherine did not attend. The king's voice, reportedly weakened by his ongoing illness, opened with a question. Is this monarchy now ruled by memory? The reference was clear. He meant Diana, and everything William had invoked with her name. William's reply was quiet, but cutting. It's not memory. It's relevance. There was no handshake, no reconciliation. The air shifted. From that day forward, palace staff began treating William as something different. Not the next king, but the acting one. Invitations were addressed to the Prince and Princess of Wales on behalf of His Majesty. Meetings were routed to his schedule first. One aide simply said, "The king rules. William leads." Charles, already weakened, reportedly became more withdrawn after that exchange. Some say he felt bypassed. Others believe he understood the tide couldn't be turned. Either way, the emotional break between father and son became public without needing words. One still wore the crown, but the other was already wearing the weight. Camilla versus Catherine. The tension finally spilled into public view during a press event on March 10, 2025, when Queen Camilla was asked directly about the Diana Initiative. Her response, while measured, sent shockwaves through the monarchy and the media. The monarchy doesn't need nostalgia to prove its worth. It was widely seen as a veiled jab, not only at Princess Diana, but at Catherine, who had become the face of the initiative. Within 24 hours, online backlash exploded. Hashtags like #LongLiveDiana and #QueenCatherine trended across platforms in the UK, Canada, and even Australia. Public polls released on March 12 showed Catherine's approval had surged to 83%, while Camilla's dropped below 40%, her lowest since 2020. Then came Catherine's quiet reply, delivered during a visit to a community youth center in Leeds. Asked about the initiative's intent, she smiled and said, "This is about the future we build together." Simple, calm, deadly. It wasn't just a clapback. It was a shift in tone. Catherine wasn't reacting anymore. She was directing, and the public took notice. Commentators across royal networks began referring to what they called a two-queen dilemma. But inside the palace, many whispered that the public had already made its choice. Behind the smiles, the palace was splitting. The monarchy had always been about image, but now it was about identity. Two women stood at opposite ends of history, one trying to solidify her place in the present, the other carrying the weight of a ghost who never truly left. And as public allegiance tilted further toward Catherine, someone unexpected stepped forward, not with words of peace, but with a sharp reminder that this family had not gotten its roots. Princess Anne enters the battlefield. Princess Anne, known for her unwavering dedication and deliberate neutrality, finally broke her silence. During a March 14, 2025 charity engagement, she was overheard speaking privately with a diplomat about Camilla's recent comments. One phrase stood out: "It's out of touch." Always has been. It wasn't the first time tension between Anne and Camilla had surfaced. Their relationship, complicated since the 1990s, had always simmered beneath royal decorum. But now, with the monarchy at a crossroads, Anne's patience had thinned. Insiders confirmed her loyalty remained firmly with William, and more significantly, with Diana's memory. The most visible sign came during a university awards ceremony at Oxford, where Camilla gestured for Anne to step forward during the closing presentation. Anne refused. Cameras caught it. Analysts dissected it for days. Body language experts confirmed what royal watchers already knew. This was not unity. This was defiance. In the following week, several senior aides began referring to Princess Anne as the silent sentinel. One insider said, "Anne doesn't raise her voice, but when she takes a stand, the institution listens." And in this rising storm, her presence gave Catherine something she hadn't had before: a wartime ally. With Anne's alignment, the cracks inside the palace turned into fault lines. This wasn't just about health or legacy anymore. It was about structure, about who would steer the crown forward and who would be left behind. While Charles faded into silence and Camilla into isolation, all eyes turned toward William and Catherine. Not because they demanded power, but because they already seemed to hold it. The crown hadn't shifted, but the weight of it, that was already in new hands. The crown tilts quietly toward William. By April 2025, it was no longer speculation. It was reality. Prince William and Princess Catherine were quietly taking over the day-to-day operations of the monarchy. Without ceremony, without titles changing. But unmistakably, power was flowing in their direction. Over a dozen royal events once assigned to King Charles were delegated to William, including diplomatic meetings with ambassadors from France, India, and Kenya. Catherine, meanwhile, assumed honorary leadership of 3 major charitable boards, including one previously held by Camilla since 2016. In an unprecedented move, the Diana Room at Kensington Palace, long closed to the public, was reopened on April 12th as a centerpiece of a new mental health campaign. It featured handwritten letters from Diana, never-before-seen photos, and a new initiative pledging £10 million in youth services over 5 years. And quietly, Camilla's influence shrank. In the past 60 days, 4 of her personal aides had resigned or been reassigned. Her public appearances were reduced to brief photo ops, none longer than 15 minutes. Meanwhile, Catherine was now seen weekly, visiting schools, hospitals, and charities, with every appearance reinforcing her role as the emotional anchor of the monarchy. Analysts weren't calling it abdication, they were calling it redirection. The king still wore the crown, but the soul of the monarchy had clearly moved to William and Catherine. But even with the crown shifting in spirit, the family and the world remained in limbo. No formal declaration had been made, no titles had changed. Yet the air inside the palace halls had grown colder, quieter. And as Charles faded from view, one final question hung in the balance, not of ceremony or tradition, but of survival. Could the monarchy evolve fast enough to withstand this silent storm? Or was it already beginning to collapse from within? A monarchy in transition. By May 2025, King Charles III remained physically present, but emotionally and politically absent. He made only 2 public appearances that month, both under 15 minutes, both tightly controlled. He smiled, he waved, but even the public sensed the difference. He was there, but no longer leading. The monarchy itself had begun to split in 2, the past, anchored in quiet ceremony, and the future, embodied by William and Catherine, who weren't just stepping in, they were rebuilding from within. Queen Camilla, once positioned to serve as a stabilizing force, now appeared isolated. Her retreat from public life was seen less as strategy and more as surrender. Commentators described her as adrift, lacking purpose or relevance in a new royal order that centered empathy and public service over hierarchy and control. Then came Princess Anne, whose rising presence gave the new generation legitimacy. Her public support of Catherine, her silent defiance of Camilla, and her unwavering loyalty to Diana's legacy had transformed her from bystander to backbone. In hindsight, that chilling announcement on February 26, 2025, His Majesty's condition has deteriorated, was not just about illness. It was the first bell of a new era. A silent coronation was already underway. One not declared by parliament or pageantry, but by action, emotion, and undeniable public will. The monarchy isn't dead, but the one we knew? That chapter is closing, and a new one is already being written, in Diana's name, in Charlotte's future, and in Catherine's quiet power. As the sun set over Buckingham Palace, the tone of the monarchy itself seemed to shift. The official announcement, made at 10:32 a.m., was brief, but devastating. His Majesty the King is in critical condition. His medical team is providing ongoing care. The royal family asks for privacy during this time. Just 12 words. But they landed like a thunderclap. Across the UK and across the world, there was a stillness. For decades, the royal family has stood as a symbol of continuity. Through wars, scandals, abdications, and heartbreaks, the crown endured. But today, for the first time in a generation, it feels fragile, human. Inside the palace, an emotional storm had already begun. Prince William was seen arriving at Clarence House just after 9 a.m. His jaw clenched, his eyes red. Catherine, by his side, looked composed but hollowed. Sources say she hadn't slept in over 36 hours. She had been at the king's side, holding his hand in silence, as the doctors delivered the news no son ever wants to hear. Queen Camilla, notably absent from public view, is said to be in seclusion at Ray Mill House. But insiders whisper that her absence reflects deeper divisions. Tensions, long simmering between Camilla and William, have now boiled over in the face of this crisis. The family, it seems, is grieving together, but apart. And yet, amid the sadness, one figure has quietly emerged as the emotional pillar of this storm: Princess Catherine. In the days leading up to the announcement, she has been described by palace staff as calm, focused, and utterly devoted. While others broke down, she made arrangements. While decisions stalled, she stepped in, a quiet force behind every door, guiding not just her husband, but the monarchy itself, through a moment of unimaginable weight. In one now confirmed moment from last night, Catherine reportedly sat alone in King Charles's study, reading from a collection of Diana's private letters. One passage, written in 1995, read, "The crown can feel like a cage, but when worn with heart, it can also be a light." Catherine wept, not just for the man whose life now hung in balance, but for what comes next. Because while the world watches the throne, Catherine is already watching the future. She knows what this moment means, not just for the monarchy, but for her children. For George, who will inherit a crown shaped by silence. For Charlotte, whose voice may one day echo Diana's. And for Louis, whose future will be lived in the shadow of all that comes next. And yet, in this heartbreak, Catherine is doing what no royal has done since Diana, leading with empathy. There have been no formal declarations, no constitutional shifts. But behind palace gates, something undeniable is unfolding. The old monarchy, shaped by distance and detachment, is giving way to something more emotional, more human, and Catherine is at the center of it. Royal aides have already begun referring to her in private as the Quiet Regent, and for many across the Commonwealth, that title already fits. Not because she rules, but because she reassures. Because in a world unraveling, Catherine remains still, strong, steady. And as the nation prepares for whatever comes next, whether days or weeks, there is comfort in her silence, power in her presence, and hope in her every move. Tonight, candles are being lit outside Buckingham Palace. Flowers rest beneath the golden gates. Crowds gather, not to protest, not to cheer, but simply to stand witness. Because today's announcement wasn't just about a king's health, it was about the end of an era, and the woman already rising to guide the next.